I do like in her work is this basic insight, which is a very commonsensical one, but I think there is a truth in it. Where, again, where you are dealing with victims of, I don't know, serial rape, extreme torture, or also things like a simple Alzheimer's or whatever, where the shock is so strong, external, that it literally destroys your personality, but you survive. What happens there? You cannot deal with it the way Freud was dealing with traumas, playing these libidinal games and so on. Literally, a post-libidinal subject survives. And this is the mystery already of Musulmanen, of this. Agamben focuses on them. Incidentally, in a strange way, he claims that we find them only in Nazi concentration camps, not in Gulag, which is a strange thing to claim, because with all my sympathies for Stalinism, I can tell you it's not true. They even had many words for them. If you read Gulag literature, not sentimental shit like Solzhenitsyn, but really good one, like for example Varlam Shalamov, Kolyma Tales, and so on. They had the term. One of the terms was duraki, which is the Russian for idiots, and so on. You had the living dead there. But I agree with her that this strange, weird subjectivity of a living dead, where also we have. Very nicely, Malabou points out that we have here also a problem of transference. The way they are disengaged, you cannot play the game on transference there. You cannot get them into transference. So the clinique, this would be the challenge. Is there a clinique of Muslims, how should I put it, no? How do you, not Muslims, but you know, but what is the wonderful irony of history? It's that these Muslims were mostly Jews, of course, no? They were called Muslims because, you know the story. In old, normal racist Europe, the image of Muslims was those who were totally resigned to their fate and just do this automatic gesture, total passivity. This was the ideological racist image of the Muslim. So, when you are totally destroyed in the camp, you behaved in this way. You just made this gesture, that total passivity, which is why they were called Muslims. So, okay. Let me go to my main line and to conclude relatively fast. So the main lesson here is the Lacanian one, my first conclusion would have been that something like this, a total devastation, would already have happened, I claim, in a true ecological catastrophe. We shouldn't underestimate it. There were signs already in Chernobyl and so on that how a human being reacts when you are, as it were, deprived of your life world. Because let's not forget that Lacan points out this very nicely in his early seminars. Nature is the ultimate big other. Not nature as nature, but nature as this fantasy of nature. Nature as the rhythm of seasons, stars. This is the basic reference of stability. The big other at its most elementary is when you say, oh, we humans can play with our follies, but there will be winter and summer, the sun will rise, and so on. You know, in the sense of there is some basic big other, big other. A bit of sleep in the sense of that Lynn Margulis or what, who claims that, you know, the hypothesis of Gaia, the Earth, no? That the Earth is an self-regulating organism. But Lynn Margulis, I hope I pronounce it right, sorry, the big biologist who developed this idea, she warned against mystifying Gaia as good Mother Earth. She said Gaia is a dirty bitch. I like it. Okay, so what I'm saying is that, so this would be truly radical ecology for me. Not just there is no big other, in the sense of symbolic system where accounts are settled, but there is no nature. To accept this utter ontological inconsistency of nature. And again, how to survive this loss of our substance. Now, just if you allow me a very short conclusion, to add not a more optimistic note, but to go into ethical consequences here, namely, and aesthetic. Does this mean that I'm preaching some kind of nihilism in the sense of, oh, everything is totally chaotic ultimately, and so on and so on? No, I think that what survives after the big other, I'm here for Badiou, eternal ideas, the Platonic domain survives, but not as substantial big other, as a pure appearance. What do I mean by this? I want to give you a little bit of a home. Precisely, returning to concentration camps, there is a wonderful short story by Jorge Semprún, you know, who wrote, I think, what is maybe the best novel about The Last Train, or what's the title, about concentration camps, because frankly, what people like, I appreciate, Levy and so on are doing, these are not exactly novels. These are fictionalized documentaries and so on. But Jorge Semprún seriously approached the problem of how can you find an artistic form that wouldn't betray the traumatic experience like that of a concentration camp. So, in his short story, The Cattle Truck, Semprún reports how he witnessed the arrival of a truckload of Polish Jews at Buchenwald camp. The Jews were stacked into the freight train, almost 200 to a car, traveling for days without food and water in the coldest winter. On arrival, all in the carriage had frozen to death, except for 15 children, kept warm by the others in the center of the bundle of bodies. You know, they were simply for days in. Adults were ethical enough to say, we stay outside, and with our warmth we enable the children to survive. So, when the children were emptied from the car, the Nazis let their dogs loose on them. They killed all children except 2 small boys. 4 or 5 years, one a little bit bigger than other, who started to run away in panic. Then this happened. Quote, the little one of these 2 children began to fall behind. The SS were howling behind them, and then the dogs began to howl too. The smell of blood was driving the dogs mad. And then the bigger of the 2 children slowed his pace to take the hand of the smaller. Together they covered a few more yards till the blows of the clubs felt them, and together they dropped, their faces to the ground, their hands clasped for all eternity. I claim this is not a metaphor, that this eternity is fully Platonic here. In what sense? Imagine how you got the point, this miracle of the 2 surviving child running away. When one fell down, the other one, even if total panic, stepped back, held his hand, and then they died together. One can easily imagine how this scene should be filmed. While the soundtrack renders what goes on in reality, that's how I would film this scene, that the image would be frozen at the moment of clasped hands, but the soundtrack would go on, the children dying and so on. The sound renders temporary reality, the image renders the eternal real of the ethical idea. I think we should read this scene, the way I imagine it, against the final shot of Thelma and Louise. You remember when the car... I think that there, unfortunately, you don't have a soundtrack, which is why it's missed. It's too vulgar. If I were to shoot, I think the more correct procedure, Ridley Scott, I think, was the director, would have been to have the image frozen, but the sounds of crash and so on and so on. This is, in this way, you can render the Platonic duality of the chaos of empirical reality and the eternal idea, which is not any kind of a deep, substantial idea. It's this miracle of surface. What do I mean by this? Recall the old Catholic strategy, how to guard man against the temptation of the flesh. They tell you, this is the old Catholic, I read it in some books even when I was young, a religious uncle gave it to me, that when you are tempted by a beautiful woman, the thing to do is to imagine how this woman will look in a couple of decades. The dried skin, sagging breasts, and so on and so on. Or, this friend told me, even better, imagine how already now she looks inside. Like, you see a beautiful breast, but imagine all the blood, the stomach, the shit in, and so on and so on. What's my point here? It's that far from enacting, now that old-fashioned Lacanian, pseudo-Lacanians would have said, this is return to the real. The beautiful woman is image, imaginary, but you go to the real, which is the vulgar real of bodily. I claim exactly the opposite. The truly traumatic real is the surface, this abyss of pleasures that a naked body maybe promises, and so on. And this idea of imagining all the dirt there is precisely the very form of the escape from the real. The same thing, I think, happens in pornography. Often people laugh at me that I repeat in my usual theory about pornography this fact how pornography has this fear of over-identification, emotional, no? Which is why in traditional pornography, when you see it all, the story is usually extremely stupid. The story which introduces the event, you know, like, I'm not kidding, the last one I saw is years ago, is one where it was something like, no, I will tell you what I saw more recently, I'm not, it's like, you know, a plumber comes home, fixes the hole, and then the wife says, but I have another hole to be fixed, can you, you are embarrassed. And I claim they are not so stupid. There is a deep censorship here, as if to have both at the same time, that is to say, the emotionally engaging story and you see it all, it's somehow prohibited. But what goes on now, I claim, is an even stronger censorship. I was told, and all I know is then I checked on some of the free websites, and you can imagine the price I'm paying now, once you tested them. They note your, so every time I open email I get, guaranteed in 2 weeks, 3 inches longer, and so on, you know, like, that's life, no? Okay, so it's so-called, you know, this so-called, they call it gonzo pornography. Which means what? That not only is the story stupid, but they consciously destroy even the minimal illusion that you are observing a narrative. Gonzo means that they include the fact into their behavior that they are filmed. Like, they make laugh, but the woman makes a gesture, they address the camera, they make jokes about themselves, and so on. I think this is, you see, this is censorship. It's an incredible form of censorship. What they are afraid of is pure appearance. Precisely, what is dangerous is appearance. And again, for Lacan, real is not the deep real when you tear it off, the ultimate truth. The real is appearance. And so in this sense, I claim, when Lacan says there is no big other, in the sense of substantial reference and so on, it in no way, it doesn't mean a kind of pseudo-oriental wisdom, existential cynicism, you know, everything returns to dust. No, eternity should be saved, but as appearance of eternity. I'm sorry if I was too long, but that's life. What can you do? Nothing. Thank you very much. So we have, if it's okay with you, Jack, we have still some 10 minutes, whatever, of time to pretend that we are in democracy, no? If you... So, please, are you? But help me, because I'm myopic, and then I may not see your hand, and then I'm usually accused of racism, sexism. I mean, these accusations are true. I am all that, but nonetheless, please.